Here we are with Obsessed with Assessment podcast, and we're bringing you some more assessment in the news chat. There have been some intriguing developments in the world of educational assessment. On Monday, 3rd of February, Ofsted revealed proposals for their new look inspection approach, and they introduced us to their plans for school report cards. Emma and I are here to reflect on the new approach and, in particular, consider what this could all mean for assessment in schools. All of that to unpack in just a moment. Okay, I've been through all the new Ofsted documentation and I've picked out what I like about the proposals. We'll run through those ideas and then we'll focus on where assessment fits within that. I think from the top, they set the tone very nicely. So they talk about rebuilding trust. They talk about going about our work with professionalism, empathy, courtesy, and respect. Our inspections must feel done with, not done to. There is an emphasis on community and context and taking into account the school background. Again, I think that's positive. I have heard negative things about that. I think it's particularly in the leadership section that there is an emphasis that if you want to get better than the secure grade, then you need to be almost kind of like doing things in the community.
So actually about how, like the place that you hold within a community rather than the community that you serve as a school.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. I would read into that it takes into account the demographic of the children and parents at that school.
As with everything this Labour government are saying about their plans for education, we're seeing this Ofsted presentation through an inclusion lens. They say we will focus on the experiences and outcomes of disadvantaged children and learners. And that is huge as part of the government's messaging, isn't it? We are looking after the disadvantaged
Mm.
children, and that can only be a positive thing to my mind. And I also, what I really like about the Ofsted approach here, they appear to be very open. They appear to be happy to have dialogue with the teaching community, with the stakeholders who are actually affected by what they're doing. They've got an online survey they want people to fill in. They're running focus groups. There's a whole consultation period. They're doing more user research as they go, testing report cards, visiting providers. These things all feel like we are listening, we are in dialogue, and we will take into account what our frontline users are going to need from this.
I'm doing a face.
Go on, tell me what your face means.
I think we've heard this a lot of times about a lot of things. Like, oh, we'll listen to the voices of teachers, we'll listen to the voices of school leadership and of parents, and that doesn't ever seem to be what ends up being laid out as the finished product, I guess. It doesn't, and you're going like, where did you get this feedback from? Who told you this was a good idea? Because none of the voices I've heard would have suggested that this was the way forward with whatever it is, whatever initiative it is. I think you'll be more optimistic than me.
Well, I suppose I partly agree with you, but I also think we have heard this before, but we have also seen before where there has been no dialogue whatsoever. So you
Oh,
think
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
2014 new curriculum, there was, I don't remember them being any dialogue. I was frontline teaching, so maybe I wasn't listening, but here
Yeah, and maybe talking about this, the recognition in itself that they should be doing that is a positive.
caught my eye that they're looking for schools to support teachers via a high quality professional development program. I think we've spoken before about teachers needing professional development when it comes to assessment. If Ofsted are working with schools to offer that high quality professional development program, fabulous. That sounds very good.
Mm.
I think on your criticism, though, I think we could easily look at all of this and say, well, we've heard that before.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I think that is going to be sort of the theme throughout for me. Is like, well, we'll see.
I love this. It says, We do not want inspection to add to leaders' workloads. We want it to come together with the everyday business of running a provider so that it does not detract leaders from what they are already doing to continuously improve their provision.
Although I feel like we've been told that for a long time, oh, they want to come in and just see a normal school day, and it doesn't stop people from pulling
No.
out all the stops or panic stations when they get the call.
So those were the things I liked and you were skeptical about.
Because I don't dislike those things. I just look at them with a healthy dose of skepticism, I think.
Unlike my unhealthy optimism. Oh. Let's move on to assessment then. So, in the most recent Ofsted School Inspection Handbook, it was updated last in September 2024, there are four main categories for judgment, and that's been the case for a few years now. And those four main categories are education, behaviour and attitudes, personal development, and leadership and management. And then each of those is split into further subcategories. Assessment is neither one of those categories, as you heard,
Mm,
nor is it a subcategory. Assessment appears under curriculum most prominently, but it doesn't have its own section at all. The emphasis is on assessment that's embedded in curriculum, which is obviously largely formative. And there are some references to observing how assessment data is used to inform curriculum planning, but data is generally assessment data is generally it's not a key driver basically to the Ofsted report.
yeah.
That is completely blown out of the water by this new plan, which I really like. So as an assessment nerd, I really like the fact that assessment appears a lot. So we've got achievement, read assessment, appearing as one of the nine main categories. So they've gone from four categories to nine categories. It's one of them. And then it's broken out again into two distinct sections within the new toolkit format that they're working with. So assessment has suddenly gone from being
Stuffed in
it,
the curriculum drawer.
yeah, in service to curriculum, which is I mean, it should be in service to curriculum, but it's gone from that lowly role to this much bigger feature on the Ofsted framework or the proposed Ofsted framework. Um, and I thought this was a bit of a statement of intent. We propose to summarise information on the provider and local area alongside the report card where relevant and available. And this includes outcomes, performance data for all children and learners and for particular groups, including those who are disadvantaged. We will highlight trends in performance data, which is really interesting. So at the moment, if you to find national achievement data for schools like the league table data,
Yeah.
you have to go to a completely separate website to Ofsted. It's on the gov.uk website. Then you have to go to the Ofsted website to find your school report. Here they're talking about big national data that's going to be right next to your Ofsted judgment at the same time, which I think it's a fascinating swing. I mean, actually, it sounds much more high pressure than it was before, in the respect like you have a parent looking at comparison data, and it will be stark. I suppose if the Ofsted judgment is decent data, decent, and that is put alongside rubbish Ofsted judgment, rubbish
Mm.
data, then suddenly, well, it becomes even more of a judgment on a school. I've mentioned these toolkits already, and toolkits are almost the curriculum specification for Ofsted inspectors as they go into schools.
Yeah, and I can see that they've really specified assessment outcomes.
Yeah, and that's again, I think that's really positive from the point of view of taking assessment seriously as a craft. I think that's a really positive thing. So they've separated it into achievement in national tests and examinations, again, high stakes assessment is being taken into account here, which it wasn't before, or only in terms of how it impacted curriculum, and then achievement across the curriculum as well, which is it's the formative thing. So they're looking at but summative and formative assessment within a school and how that is used.
I also quite liked the achievement in national tests, but then like attainment and progress in national tests. I assume that's a nod to progress over time rather than a set outcome at the end, which I think is of an advantage to schools where they have historically had poorer exam results, but actually those children are maybe coming in at a lower level.
And then there's also the attainment measurement between disadvantaged and non-disadvantaged pupils.
Really important. Like I wouldn't I would want a school who had a high level of, say, children from deprived backgrounds and a larger send cohort, for example. Like I don't I don't want them to have to be desperately trying to reach an unattainable standard, but I want to know, like, actually look at the progress those kids make from where they start.
Yeah, and what is the school doing to bring them up to that level
Yeah,
if they're not at that
definitely.
level? Yeah. As mentioned, none of this is set in stone, but you can't imagine it changing a lot because it seems so consistent with everything else that we're hearing and seeing. Now, so my takeaway is I'll give you my takeaway, and then you can bring the doom and gloom, Emma. I feel broadly optimistic that there is a positive change of direction here. And it's easy to look at all of that information and, as the unions have done, and think, wow, there is too much here. This is too big a problem for schools. But to me, this is just, it's almost small print's the wrong word, but it's process. This is just process, and that's only part of the story. And as with all assessment in schools, whether we're talking about pupil testing or school accountability measures, as we're doing here, actually, to me, the real driver is the spirit in which the processes are delivered. And this is where I think that Ofsted and Sir Martin Oliver, who heads it up, they need to be given the opportunity to prove themselves.
I think the fact that they have very openly addressed that things need to change significantly is a positive. It is. The phrase done with and not done to is exactly how Ofsted inspections should feel. I would absolutely love a world where people were looking forward to Ofsted visiting. Like, oh, we've got Ofsted coming up, so like when that we'll have so many great things to work on from them. And that's what it would be if it was done with. I think as well, done with and not done to is a really good way of approaching lots of aspects of education, including assessment.
I totally agree with that. The idea that an Ofsted visit could be perceived as a positive thing. We're coming into school and we're going to come and help you to improve your practice. Well, that's fabulous. What a good idea.
I think that having a broader set of areas that they're going to be making their judgments on is a positive. It puts less weighting on one particular thing. I just approach it with, like I say, I'm going to say cynicism. I was going to say pessimism. I'm not approaching it with pessimism. Like I say, healthy dose of cynicism in we will see. But I think that's sort of what you're saying, where you're saying, well, actually, it's is it for them to be given the opportunity to show us that they can?
Yeah, well, that's good. So we're basically saying the
Yeah,
same thing.
I think we're saying exactly the same thing. I think I'm going a little bit more than you are.
I hope that's been interesting for you. We'd love to hear what you think of the new Ofsted proposals or about anything assessment related. In fact, email us at assessment@twinkle.co.uk. Like and subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends. Check out all of the splendid assessment tools on the Twinkle website. And we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.